It started on a quiet Tuesday morning. The sky was gray and the air felt heavy. I stood by the window with a cup of warm tea. My husband, Daniel, was still in bed. I looked out at the street, but my mind was not calm. Something had felt wrong for weeks. I could not explain it, but I felt it in my chest. Daniel was not the same. He was kind, but distant. His smile did not reach his eyes anymore. My name is Natalie. I am 29 years old. I live in a small house with Daniel. We have been married for 4 years. I work at a local office. It is not a big job, but it pays the bills. Daniel works in a garage. He fixes cars and changes tires. He comes home tired, and most evenings he eats and then sleeps. That was normal. But something changed last month. I started feeling like a guest in my own home. He did not look at me the same way. His hugs were short. His phone never left his side. One evening, I made his favorite dinner. I wanted to sit with him, talk, and laugh. But when he came home, he just said, "Thanks," and ate in silence. I asked, "How was your day?" He said, "It was fine," without looking up. I waited for him to ask about my day. He didn't. After dinner, he took his plate to the sink and went into the living room. I sat alone at the table and looked at the empty chair across from me. That night, I could not sleep. Daniel turned his back to me in bed. I stared at the ceiling. I remembered how we used to talk late at night, laugh under the covers, and plan small weekend trips. We used to be happy, but now he was quiet, cold, and far away, even when he was right next to me. A few days later, something happened that I can't forget. It was a Saturday. Daniel said he had to go fix a car. I said, "It's your day off." He said, "It's an emergency. A friend needs help." I tried to smile, but my heart sank. I said, "Okay. Be safe." He left quickly. I stood by the door after it closed and listened to the sound of his car driving away. Later that day, I went into the bedroom to put away some clean clothes. I saw his work jacket on the chair. It was dirty from the garage. As I lifted it, something fell from the pocket. It was his phone. He had never left it behind before. Not even once. I picked it up. I stared at the screen. My hands were shaking. I did not want to look. I did not want to be that kind of wife. But the phone was in my hand. My heart beat faster. My fingers moved before I could stop them. There were many messages, some from work, some from friends, and one from a name I didn't know. Erica. I opened it. My breath caught in my throat. The first thing I saw was a photo. It was Daniel. He was smiling, but not the smile he gave me these days. It was a warm, soft smile. His arm was around a woman. She had short brown hair and red lipstick. They stood close. Too close. The message below the photo said, "I had a lovely time yesterday. Miss you already." I dropped the phone. It hit the floor and made a loud sound. I stood still. I could not move. My hands covered my mouth. My eyes were wide. My knees felt weak. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to breathe. My chest was tight. My face was hot. I stared at the phone on the floor. I wanted to believe it was nothing. Maybe she was a friend. Maybe it was old. Maybe it was not what it looked like. But I knew better. I felt it in my bones, in my heart. This was the thing I had feared. Daniel was seeing someone else. I picked up the phone again. I read more messages. There were jokes, sweet words, and even a plan to meet next weekend. One message said, "Don't worry, she won't know." I put the phone back in the jacket pocket. I folded the jacket and placed it neatly on the chair like I had never touched it. I walked to the bathroom and closed the door. Then I cried. I sat on the floor and let the tears fall. I did not make a sound. I just let the pain come. I held my knees close and closed my eyes. My head hurt. My heart hurt more. I did not know how long I sat there. Later that evening, Daniel came home. He looked around, then came into the kitchen. I had cooked dinner again. He smiled and said, "Smells good." I smiled back, small and fake. My hands were still shaking. I could not look at his face for too long. I was afraid he would see the truth in my eyes. He ate like normal. He talked about the car he fixed. He said it was a long day. I listened. I nodded. I said things like, "That's good," and "I see." But inside I was cold. I felt like I was looking at a stranger. After dinner, he said, "I'm tired. I'll take a shower and sleep." I said, "Okay." He kissed my cheek. It felt wrong. It felt like a lie. When he left the room, I cleaned the table. My hands moved slowly. My thoughts were loud. I asked myself many questions. Should I ask him? Should I wait? Should I pretend I didn't see the photo? That night, I lay awake again. His back was to me. I looked at the ceiling once more. The light from the street came through the curtain. I watched the shadow of the tree move on the wall. My heart was full of noise. My head was full of questions. But I said nothing. Not yet. The next morning, I made breakfast. He thanked me. He kissed my forehead. He left for work. I stood at the window and watched his car disappear down the road. Then I turned around and whispered to myself, "I saw the photo." I had not decided what to do yet, but I knew one thing. Life would not be the same again. Before I continue my story, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from? Sometimes I wonder if someone out there really understands me. Just knowing you're here gives me strength. I did not tell anyone about the photo. I went to work like always. I smiled at my coworkers. I helped customers. I answered calls. But inside, I was not okay. I felt like I was carrying a heavy rock in my chest. Every word I said felt fake. Every step I took felt slow. I wanted to go home, but when I got home, it was not better. Daniel came home at the usual time. He kissed my cheek and smiled, but it did not feel real. His phone was always in his hand. He smiled when he looked at it, a smile I had not seen in a long time. I noticed every little thing, how fast he replied to messages, how he put his phone face down when I walked into the room. I knew, but I said nothing. I needed time to think. One night, he left his phone on the table for just a moment. A message came in. I saw the name, Erica. The message said, "See you soon. I missed you yesterday." He picked up the phone before I could read more. He said, "Just a message from a friend." I smiled and said, "Okay." But my heart felt like it was made of glass. I wanted to cry. I wanted to shout. But I just went to the kitchen and made tea. That weekend, I went to visit my sister, Michelle. She lived outside the city in a small house with a quiet yard. When she saw me, she said, "You look tired." I smiled and said, "Work has been busy." She looked at me for a long time and said, "Is something wrong at home?" I sat down on her sofa and looked at the floor. Then I told her, "I saw something on Daniel's phone. A photo. A woman. Her name is Erica." Michelle was quiet. Then she asked, "Do you think he's seeing her?" I nodded. "Yes. I know it in my heart." She said softly, "I'm so sorry." I looked at her and asked, "What do I do?" She said, "Do you still love him?" I said, "I don't know. I thought I did." Michelle took my hand. "You don't have to decide today." That night I stayed at her house. I cried a little, but I also felt safe. In the morning, I went home. Daniel was in the kitchen. He looked surprised. "You're back early," he said. I said, "Yes, I wanted to rest." He walked over and kissed my forehead. "I missed you," he said. I smiled. I did not answer. My heart felt far away. A few days passed. I watched him. I waited. Then one night, I knew it was time. We were sitting in the living room. The TV was on, but I was not watching it. He was looking at his phone. I took the remote and turned off the TV. He looked at me. "What's wrong?" he asked. I said, "Who is Erica?" He blinked. He froze. "What do you mean?" I looked at him. I saw the photo. I saw the messages. "I want to know the truth." He stood up. You looked at my phone? I stood up too. You left it in your jacket. I didn't plan to look, but I saw it. He looked away. His face turned pale. I asked again, Are you in love with her? He did not speak. That silence said everything. I took a breath. Please, just be honest. I already know. He sat down. His voice was low. I didn't mean for it to happen, I said, but it did. He nodded. Yes. I felt my heart break again, not because I was surprised, but because I wanted to be wrong. I said, You smiled at her. You don't smile at me like that anymore. He looked at the floor. He didn't answer. I walked to the front door. I opened it. You can go to her if that's what you want. He looked shocked. Are you serious? I nodded. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. He stood still for a few seconds, then slowly walked out. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't turn around. When the door closed, I locked it. I stood in the hallway and looked around. The house was quiet. I walked to the bedroom and sat on the bed. I touched the pillow where he usually slept. I felt a tear fall down my cheek, then another. But these tears were different. I was not crying because I felt weak. I was crying because I had told the truth. I was crying because I was finally free from a lie. That night, I lay in bed alone. But I felt something I had not felt in weeks. I felt a little peace. I did not know what tomorrow would bring. I had no plan. But I had taken the first step. And sometimes, that's enough. The next morning, I opened my eyes slowly. I looked at the other side of the bed. It was empty. The blanket was smooth. No one had slept there. I sat up and listened. The house was quiet. For the first time in a long time, I didn't hear Daniel's footsteps or his voice in the kitchen. I didn't smell coffee or toast. It felt strange. It felt empty, but it also felt calm. I got up, made tea, and sat by the window. Outside, the trees moved gently in the wind. A dog barked in the distance. A bird sat on the fence. I held my cup in both hands and watched the street. My heart still felt heavy, but my mind was clear. I was not afraid anymore. I was just tired. That afternoon, I walked to the grocery store. I needed food, but I also needed air. I wore a sweater and kept my head down. I didn't want to see anyone I knew. I didn't want to answer questions. At the store, I walked slowly. I picked up a few things: some rice, some milk, some apples. When I reached for a carton of eggs, I saw someone from behind me. It was Daniel's friend, Peter. I turned my head and hoped he didn't see me, but he did. He smiled and said, "Hey, Natalie, how are you?" I smiled back but didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I'm okay." He looked at me for a second, then said, "Daniel hasn't been at the garage today." I just nodded. "He's staying with someone else," I said. Peter looked surprised. "Oh," he said softly. I wanted to walk away, but he spoke again. "I'm sorry. I didn't know things were bad." I looked down. "It's okay. You don't have to say anything," he said. "You don't deserve this." I gave a small smile. "Thank you." When I got home, I put the food away. I cleaned the kitchen, wiped the table, and washed the dishes, even though there weren't many. I needed to keep busy. I needed to move. If I sat still, I would start thinking too much. At night, I sat on the sofa and watched a movie, but I didn't remember what happened in it. My mind kept going back to old memories. The day we moved into this house, our first dinner here, the time we painted the bedroom and got paint on the floor. It was all still there, inside these walls. But he wasn't. The next few days were quiet. No calls, no messages. I didn't call him either. I didn't want to. I didn't want to beg or ask for anything. I didn't want to hear excuses. I had heard enough. One day, I got home from work and saw his jacket still on the chair. It was the same jacket where I had found his phone. I picked it up and looked at it for a moment. Then I opened the closet and put it inside. I closed the door. I wasn't ready to throw it away, but I didn't want to see it anymore. That weekend, my sister came to visit me. She brought flowers and a small bag of cookies. We sat at the table and had tea. She looked around the house and said, "It feels different." I said, "Yes, I think I feel different too." She smiled gently. "I'm proud of you." I looked at her. "Why?" She said, "Because you didn't stay quiet. You asked for the truth. That takes courage." I didn't answer. I just looked down at my cup. My eyes were wet, but I didn't cry. Not this time. Later that evening, we walked in the park near my house. The air was cool, and the sky was light pink. There were other people in the park, families, couples, children riding bikes. I watched them. Some were laughing. Some were holding hands. It made my chest feel tight. I used to walk here with Daniel. We used to sit on that same bench and talk about silly things. I looked away from the bench and kept walking. When we got back to my place, Michelle hugged me. She said, "Call me if you need anything, even if you just want to talk." I said, "I will." After she left, I sat in the bedroom and looked out the window. A soft breeze came in through the open glass. I thought about what would come next. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew I would be okay. The next morning, I went to the garage to return Daniel's spare key. I walked in slowly. The room smelled like oil and metal. One of the workers took the key and nodded. "He's not here," he said. I said, "That's fine." Then I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. Outside, I stood by the road and waited for the bus. The sun was warm on my face. I closed my eyes for a moment and just breathed. That evening, I cleaned the bedroom. I changed the sheets. I opened the window wide. I folded some clothes and placed them in a box. Some were his. Some were mine. I didn't know what to do with them yet, but I wanted them out of sight. I found an old picture of us in the drawer. It was from our trip to the coast. We were both smiling. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I put it back in the drawer and closed it. At night, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. I looked around the room. The light was soft. The house was quiet. I thought about the first day I saw the photo, how my hands shook, how my heart broke. Now the pain was still there, but it didn't crush me. It just sat inside me like a small stone. I could carry it. I could still walk. A week later, I got a message from Daniel. It said, "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen. My hands did not move. I did not answer. I turned off my phone and placed it face down on the table. Then I looked outside. The street was quiet. A little boy rode his bike past my house. A woman walked her dog. Life was still going. So would I. I knew this was not the end of my story. It was just the end of a chapter. There would be more days. Some would hurt. Some would feel better. But I had already taken the hardest step. I saw the truth. I faced it. I chose myself. And now I was beginning again.